Guan, do we have an agenda for today? Because
I am not sure, but I guess we can check.
I don't think I saw anything last time I checked. I just joined to know if there is any discussion up for discussing.
Let me see. But we can also see who else joins. I mean, if anybody else from the DSC joins, they might have some topics. So maybe we can give them a couple minutes. Maybe some people are just a bit late. But of course, if anybody else wants to put an item to the agenda, we can.
I just wanted to highlight that I posted an 01 draft on the JSON schema stuff to the IETF working group, and people are starting to comment on it. It contains more examples than ever before.
Nice, that's good.
Continue working on examples. Yeah, there was a lot of room to make the spec more readable. And the examples aren't too long because they tend to supply one or two things at the same time, like the example that has both all of and if. They work so well in tandem that you might as well have one example that shows both all of and if.
Cool. Yeah, that sounds interesting. And I guess mainly, for example, I guess in my experience, people have been forever confused about some of the semantics of the unevaluated keywords and dynamic references. I think even just a couple of examples there would make a big difference, I guess.
So unevaluated keywords, like showing in an example just some random thing that you can ignore?
Yeah, I mean, like unevaluated properties, right? Or unevaluated items or some of those. I don't think people appreciate a lot of that. And it's hard to explain even for the people that use them. So at least for the people that we have helped or I have worked with, it's more like, oh, if we put this here, it works, but we probably have no idea why.
Yeah.
I've read the specification fairly recently, and I believe I believe I have some valuable insight regarding these things. I remember writing exactly like the things that I thought about the specification needed in my blog post, but I honestly can't remember what exactly I said.
Oh, so, well, can you dig up a link to that?
Oh yeah, sure. 1 second. Here, this is the link to the first tweet. The first 2 weeks I spent reading, like this is a blog series. The first 2 were spent reading the spec, and yeah, they contain all of my I wouldn't want to say criticism, but like all of my problems going through the spec.
Opportunities for improvement.
Yeah, you should read the new one then on the IETF and see how that compares when you have it fresh.
Also, like regarding the specification and stuff, I remember asking Jason before about like I had certain opinions that I wanted to share regarding the spec. Like I wanted to like share them with him, but he told me to like write an issue on GitHub on the repo or something, the specification repo. Is there like any keyword that I need to use or like tag, or do I just start an issue and write stuff? Like, what do I do?
Right. So, it's important to understand, first of all, that any work going on this JSON schema site or its issues is now separate from the work going on in the IETF. The IETF working group will, all the work goes on in the mailing list. There's only one place for IETF comments, and that's the mailing list, or I suppose in-person meetings if you're coming to Vienna in July. And the IETF one is the one that's going to become an RFC. So it will become a stable reference for other specifications and have wider community consensus around it.
Well, this I think this is going to be pretty hard for me to do. Like
No,
I'm not.
well, I was going to say those are the official places, but since I'm the author or editor of the IETF one, I'm happy to take comments directly. I'm happy to read your blog post.
Yeah, this sounds incredibly nice. Basically, like my two thoughts on the now there are a few pointers that I have on the specification, and then there are like a few more like recommendations, whatever. Like I'll just say everything. Okay. First of
Awesome.
all, thank you. First of all, one of my problems was that it wasn't clear who the specification was talking to. Some paragraphs were referring to you as a JSON schema user. Others was referring to you as a JSON schema implementer. So it was pretty confusing which ones were referring to which. Like
This has been a major theme for the very first work I did on this. The very first work was to reorganize the chapters so that the first chapters addressed somebody who's a user of JSON schema. And then only after those chapters were finished do we get into advice that's only useful for implementers. And then the last audience at the very back of the document is people who wanted to write meta schemas or extension standards and basically do that kind of self-referential deeper stuff, which is like 1% of the audience.
Yeah, that sounds nice. Personally, clearly stated, like this paragraph is for this user, this other paragraph is for this other type of user, like instead of me just implicitly finding out what it means by the end of the paragraph.
Yeah, I think I kept in text that said which chapters need to be read by a user versus an implementer versus an extender.
I dropped a link,
That
by
would
the
be
way,
nice.
given that you were talking about the custom meta schema stuff. I dropped an article that I published recently
Ooh,
for
thank you.
for a user of mine, mostly. But I've actually been doing this at a couple of companies, and it's not that uncommon, I think, in practice. Mainly in like bigger enterprises, it's a very good way of enforcing domain like modeling guidelines. So you will be surprised the amount of people that are doing that kind of stuff. But I finally managed to put a nice tutorial-ish, like thing on it. But I think, also on the spec, I guess, just to continue the discussion in there, I probably think, the specification, it's very hard for a user to attempt to learn JSON schema from a specification. And I guess that remains for most technologies out there. I'm not sure how much you can actually, I guess, like make it to both personas very well. Usually it is more for implementers in a way, right?
Yeah.
I agree.
Sometimes you need a tutorial.
Yeah, like
But you
JSON
probably at least
schema
want to get it, right?
like JSON schema has a lot of good tutorials. The tool website is amazing in my opinion. So this was one thing. Another thing is the this is more of a thought. Like like JSON schema 2020, JSON schema 2020 was separated into 3 files, okay, or like 3 different files: the core and the validator keywords. From what I understand from JSON, sorry, the maintainer, okay. From what I understand, he said that he stopped doing this for V1, that everything was put in one file. I honestly think that we should go back to the original, to what we did in 2020. Like, I believe that we should separate the core keywords from the from other like just the core of JSON schema should be in one file, and the specific keywords, like whether it's just the validators or the validator and applicators, should be in another one. Okay, like when I said this to Jason, he told me that he thought that he didn't like how it currently is, and that he would have preferred it if the applicators were in the same file with the validators. and I don't care. Like this sounds better to me. I don't mind this. Okay, as long as the core concepts are in one file and the specific implementations of specific keywords are in another. You know.
Yeah, I don't. That's something that at this point in the IETF road to an RFC, that you would need to bring that up on the IETF list, because that would be a big organizational change in what you depend upon, how that affects things that depend on JSON schema, and how those two documents depend on each other becomes fraught. So I'm not against it. You know, I'm the editor, and if that's what the working group wanted to do, I can see the benefits of it. But
it's just structurally hard at this point.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Good thing I've already read the spec. So yeah. The third thing, and this is one of the this is basically the most serious thing to me. Okay. The output format. The original output format of JSON Schema 2020 was, to put it slightly, terrible. Okay, and these are not my words. These are the words of the guy who actually wrote them. Okay, like Ben. No, not Ben. He was. Just a second. Yeah, Ben. I think Greg Dennis. Yeah, Greg Dennis. Okay, he was the guy who wrote it, and he was like. He personally said that it was pretty terrible, okay? And he actually wrote a much better one in a blog post, okay? I just want, like, can we make this an official, like, can we make it official? Because, like, I actually started implementing the incredibly difficult, unpleasant output format, and after basically asking for help on a Slack channel, he sent me his blog post, and everything became much easier. Okay, so if you can make it like official, that would be much better.
Do you have a link to that blog post?
Yeah, sure. Give me a second.
Okay. And I wonder if Greg would be interested in proposing that to the working group.
Hopefully he does. Where is it? Here it is.
I mean, by the way, there have been extensive discussions about this, if I recall correctly, also in the GitHub repo. And I think one of the main things that we arrived at is that how do you present the output? It just vastly depends on what kind of application you're also writing, also in terms of performance and the level of details and what parts of it you actually care about. And it's very hard to come up with something that would fit everybody and not kind of half fit everybody, therefore fit nobody. So a lot of the discussions were on proposing different kinds of output formats, if I recall correctly. There would be an array of them that you could pick from as recommendations, as potentially a separate, like output spec, but also be free to kind of implement your own. It really depends, right?
I have no problem with this as long as it's like official, because like the one currently in the spec is incredibly unpleasant. You know?
And so this is all the annotation stuff, right? That the keywords that aren't understood are to be treated as annotations, and annotations are to be treated in the output a certain way.
Like mostly like it's mostly like the interaction between errors and annotations, not like, you know what I mean? Because like in the one in this blog post, it's just completely separate. Like if it is an error, it's just errors, and like it has its unique shape that is completely separate, and like like it just completely separates errors and and annotations, whereas the one in 2020 is just a mess. It's just like like they're basically treated interchangeably, kind of, but not really.
I mean, in the standard one, there is an annotations top level thing, though they are separated. So you would have an errors array, or as per the schema that we release on the output format, you can have an annotations array, and then you can include the actual annotation, per value. So maybe that's, I'm not sure what you mean exactly. I think if you have an example, we can probably go through it.
Give me a few minutes and I'll give you a concrete example, because like I remember it was pretty annoying in certain specific cases and incredibly ambiguous in a lot of them. So just give me
Yeah, and I know the annotation stuff has been has created disagreement. Like I know Henry and Austin told me there's one particularly notable implementer of JSON schema libraries who refuses to implement annotations. And so if there's something we take out or simplify to make it a fully interoperable standard, that is a candidate for that. I guess I'll probably get discussion going on that at some point on the IETF list.
Do you know why they refuse to implement annotations?
It seemed aesthetic. Did I reach out to him? I think I tried to message him on GitHub and say, hey, I'm working on this. What do you want to talk about your opinion on it? But I think if I reached out, I never heard an answer. I'd be happy to talk to especially implementers. Implementers often have the most useful information on specs, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but it will be interesting to see. But for example, on the output ones, I'm not sure how easy it is actually to read, but we do have a test suite for the output formats. And this is one that tests an annotation. And the way that we do it is that we have the schema in there and the instance, and then on the output, we are defining a test for the basic mode. And you can see how the basic mode requires an annotations top level, array that would actually contain the other ones, like making them properly separate. But I agree the documentation is not great. I mean, and I wonder how much of the confusion, even with the current one, comes down to that the spec is extremely vague on how it describes it, whereas maybe in practice with some clarification it might not. I wonder. But yeah, hey Ben, how's it going? We're discussing the output formats, by the way, on JSON Schema 2012. And some of the discussions that happened, on that, why or why not is clear or not, in comparison also to Greg's proposal that he wrote in a blog post. And I think, there was some discussions on GitHub at some point, but kind of trying to define what's good or bad on that. Right.
Okay.
But if you want to play around, by the way, with the standard output format, on my CLI that I have a validate command, if you do --JSON, it will provide a result using the standard output format, including the annotations and all that, which might be good just to play around with. Not saying it's great though. I use all the completely different formats for presenting output depending on the application. So it's not like a general one I use everywhere. It just really depends on what you need. Any opinions, Ben, on the output format?
I mean, I haven't looked at. Is this something Greg has put out recently? Like I haven't seen anything recently.
No, I think it was a while ago. I don't recall correctly. Yeah, I think 2022.
I think part of the reason we wanted the output format is there was a big recognition of downstream tooling needed to process results in some way. For example, like we had And people have made like extensions to existing tools, like better AGV errors. And it's like, yeah, that's lovely for AJV, but what if you don't want to use AJV and you want to have all the nicer looking errors, or you want to do some post processing on that information in some way? Like, you can't. There wasn't a way to standardize having the information from the processing in a way which could be used by any tool or could be provided by any tool in a standardized way. And I think that was a big driver, recognizing that we can't fix all downstream tooling, but we can provide a common interface for them to work off in the future. I don't think I think what we wanted to do was demonstrate the capabilities by doing one or two of those ourselves. And I don't think we ever really had the time or drive to do that after we all left Postman. So I'm still hopeful that we'll see some utility from it, and we'll see like some exemplar tooling coming out from that to demonstrate like why it's useful, and encourage more implementations to add that. Like, there certainly is a performance cost, but I think as I expect you've alluded to already, like, if you can intelligent tooling, you can run in multiple modes. You can run it in the mode which gives you all of the output, or you can run it in the super fast, just tell me if this is good or bad mode, right? And you'll get performance accordingly, because sometimes you don't need the output. And I think that was some of the struggle when it came to the implementation. I remember some of the discussion. People going, well, I'm not going to implement this because it makes my performance horrendous. So, well, yes, I kind of get that, and that's why we made it required, and only kind of like a recommendation or a can do, or whatever we phrased it as, and then whatever requirements language we used around that. Like, it wasn't the extended output format wasn't a requirement of the spec.
But I think there is also another axis, to that, which is not only so performance. Yes, it is a big deal, right? But it's in one way, it's not even JSON schema specific. If you need to post process a lot to actually generate even good error descriptions, generating, for example, the JSON pointers at each step, the evaluation path, there is definitely a lot of overhead that comes on that. But beyond that, beyond the performance aspect, you can't satisfy every consumer with the same one. And the best example that I have implemented is I also support a trace output format, and I support that in all of my tooling and Blaze. And the target of that tracing mode is debugging specifically. So when you're working with very large schemas, either me or somebody else, or through references or whatever, I have a different way of outputting the standard, the actual evaluation format in a way that reveals trace-oriented debugging information, so that you can see more under the hood and see what's actually happening as a schema author, to be able to pinpoint what the problems are. And if you just do it with for example, with the standard output format, there is a lot that you would miss on that. But mine then is even more verbose, right? Which it's even less fit for other cases. It really depends. I think it's very hard to have one that fits all cases.
Yeah. I mean, you're completely right. And like the trace output is super, super powerful. So yeah, I can't wait to see what you're going to do with that, and what downstream tooling you build on top of that, because we need it. We need a good debugger. Like, I believe there is one commercial which only works on Windows, and it's the only one I've seen.
I haven't seen mine. I have a POC and I have delayed it forever because of other pressing features. It's like sitting somewhere on a branch or somewhere. But I showed it to Jason, like, it works. You can see the lines and everything. It's kind of cool. But yeah, priorities. We'll get there.
Yeah, always the way, right?
Yeah. Yes, I'm not sure what my suggestion, also would be on that. It's a tricky topic. I'm not sure how much it's worth it is even to try to standardize it or not. I think you might end up in a situation that, yes, you have kind of something that works, but like nobody is particularly happy with it. Yeah.
Yeah, like it's
I believe I remembered my issues with
there you go.
I was saying I believe I remembered my issues with the output format, the original output format, and my like the reasons I really like the new one. Okay, the original one was like keyword centric. If I like each structure, each object, each output sub object or something, I don't know how to call it, okay, is tailored to the keyword, okay, to each individual keyword. So you could have like a lot of output and a lot of like it could be really verbose as opposed to like the new output format, which is more schema centric, or like, you know, and like it like the new one, it has like clearly like clearly defined functions for each object, okay, or like something like that. Let me try to give a concrete example, okay. Let's say that we have, for example, just we're going through a schema, okay. I'll try to get an example. Let's say this example from the specification, okay. 1 second. This is terrible. I think it would be just better if I share screen, right?
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. Give me a second. So let's take an example from here, for example. Sorry. So here, this is okay. This is the current output. Okay. So, like, how do I say this? Like, give me a. I'll retry again. Sorry. I'll how do I say this? I'll recuperate, get my thoughts together, and then I'll retry later. Okay, sorry.
One observation, I guess, from me, I mean, while you dig into it, like so on my registry, I support validating request bodies against JSON schema. So for any API endpoint that takes that, like for example, I support MCP on the new version, and anything that you're doing over MCP with JSON RPC gets validated with a request schema using my implementation. And one of the things that bothered me a lot about this is the output format is very JSON schema author specific, right? If you present an error to a request body that mentions the evaluate path and the keyword location and stuff like that, doesn't mean anything to anybody, even less if the schemas that you're actually reporting these from are not even public, which in many cases on APIs they actually are. So you might be getting all sorts of metadata about the internal JSON schema evaluation on the error that just doesn't make any sense to somebody that doesn't know JSON schema, like the average user of the API. I think what we have even at the moment is very low level. It makes sense if you know JSON schema. If not, it's very obscure. It might be worth reopening the discussion, I guess, as a next step. I'm not sure how much we can make progress in the call, but it would be nice to get everybody that has opinion on it, I guess, like rediscuss the topic. I think there has been discussions before and it just didn't lead anywhere more than, well, it's very implementation specific at the end of the day.
Well, there's a mechanism for coming to decisions in the IETF working group part of this, which is consensus calls on the working group mailing list. So I expect there will come some such consensus calls. I don't know if I'm ready to kick off a discussion on annotations or just wait for somebody else to kick off a discussion of annotations, but I'm sure it's going to happen in the life of this working group.
Yeah, annotations is an interesting one. Definitely underused, but it's very powerful, I think.
Mm-hmm.
But performance is tricky with it
Right.
in a lot of cases, right? If it might invoke a lot of allocations on evaluators that do not allocate for performance reasons, right? So it can bring some things down with you.
I believe I've structured my thoughts this time, and hopefully I can do it this time. Anyway, so let's say that we are using this schema on this instance. Okay.
Yeah.
Very simple, very like basic, trivial. Okay. It's just going to be like it passes. Okay. The output would look like this. And this is an incredibly simple schema, an incredibly simple instance, like there's nothing in it, okay? And still we have this output, okay? Because every keyword has its own node, its own object, okay?
Well, it's not every keyword. These
Not
are all
every-
because this one is emitting annotations, and those 4 ones are annotation keywords specifically.
Yeah, you have a point, but like still, like each annotation keyword, each like still, why does everyone have its own keyword, have its own object? Why does an annotation need to have like a valid true? Like why? You know?
Yeah, the valid true is definitely a
And
bit
like-
nonsense. But
why do I need? Why does like? How am I supposed to implement this cleanly? Like, am I supposed to have like one universal object structure that has optionally has either annotations or annotation, depending on whether it has sub schema, sub things or not? Like, when I tried to implement it, it was incredibly like overly complicated.
what would you
and, like,
expect it to
annoying.
be?
I would expect it to be something like this. Instead of having each keyword having its own object, you would have each schema and sub-schema have its own object, okay? So this same exact schema and instance would have this output instead, okay? You would have the, wait, not this, sorry. Where did it go? Doesn't know about annotations. Yeah, I think it would be this one, yeah, okay? It would look something more like this, okay? You have a valid at the end, which says like, sorry, wait. Yeah, you would have the main, the outer schema with then either valid or false, okay? And you would have a details list, okay? Containing all of the sub-schemas inside this schema, okay?
But this one is not complete. I think you're looking, what you're pointing at here, I think is a subset of the other one, or I think is part of the nesting, right? Because, for example, this one is omitting the title and description. There are annotations that are not in here at all. I know there is a title in there. Okay, I see.
Exactly. Instead of like,
It's just
now
grouped
we have
by-
annotations. We have an annotations keyword that has all of the annotations, you know, treated as a, what happened? Treated as a like a key value pair, you know?
Yeah, I think it's
Yeah.
well, it's opinionated, right? In a way. I'm not sure.
Yeah, of
I
course
can
it's
see both
opinionated, but
ways. You can implement it both ways with equal easiness, probably.
no. This is much simpler, in my experience at least. Maybe it's a skill issue on my part, but like,
I think
Like-
you would have to group on evaluation path, which I would presume, for example, on Blaze, it would add a bit more performance overhead than the other one. In the other one, you are emitting the annotations as you go. It's probably a lot more direct. Whereas in this one, you have to actually group by the sub-schema. Meaning, I mean, not only that, but evaluation path and schema location, right? You have to consider both on the grouping. That would be a another like hash map or something like that.
Yeah, I think with the more complicated one you're looking at now, I think it's more complicated to implement as an implementer of the spec, which is why we had the simpler version, which was easier to fit into existing code and easier to implement as a validator. I think that's the reason why you're seeing the two different versions, one being more complex than the other.
I don't know. Well, I tried to implement both. This one seemed much easier to implement. And Greg Dennis wrote both. And he was saying in this blog post that the one that the original one that was implemented was pretty bad. Like this is literally called fixing JSON schema outputs. So I don't know. I think it would be pretty insightful. I sent the link to it here. Maybe we could read it later.
Yeah, but I think that's what I mean. I think there are a lot of even concerns, even despite, for example, the simplicity of it or the grouping, but again, performance, right? I think, so I'm a C++ guy, right? And a lot of the work I'm doing is performance-wise. And if I would have to group, for example, annotations in that way, that would be significant overhead already that I predict that would take place by just, dealing with that instead of like the linear way. So I think there are many facets in here, right? And depending on, I mean, for example, annotations, a lot of people don't emit annotations by default or at all because of performance, right? And if you introduce like yet another layer of that could get complicated.
Well,
Honestly,
flipping the question, known tools with interoperability based on the annotation output format, because that's a question the working group will definitely have. Like if there's demonstrated interoperability, or to flip, if there's no demonstrated interoperability, then the IETF would prefer to strip things that don't have demonstrated interoperability and bring them to RFC standard status.
Well, but I would question how much interoperability you need. Like, for example, at least consider annotations, which I think is an interesting one. And some of the ways that I've seen annotations getting used is either for feature engineering. So as a byproduct evaluation, you get all the data as a result that you applied back in some aggregation way into the original data. And I guess a subset of that way of using it is JSON LD annotation, right? So you can have a JSON schema that has the JSON LD data, it emits the annotation and augments back the instance, right? So essentially what you do with the annotations on top, it varies. Like, say that you do the evaluation process, you get the annotations. How do you actually make use of the annotations varies a lot depending on what you're actually trying to do with it. And the only thing that you probably want is, yes, that the semantics are there and that you can get the annotations. You probably care less about an interoperable way of getting it, just that you get the same annotations among two implementations to then write your engine to do whatever you want with that, right? It's like the interoperability so at like a different level, I guess, for me.
Yeah.
I think in terms of like, I think what you're pointing to is there demonstrable utility and interoperability across different downstream tooling that uses those annotations and that output format? And I think we're not seeing that in the ecosystem, which is what I'd really hoped. And I think there are two primary reasons for this, which we knew in advance would happen, which is why we planned to do a demonstration, even though we didn't get to it. I think the first one is a lot of people don't really understand this still. So they don't really understand the potential benefit of utilizing what it offers. People are just like on the surface level of using JSON schema for very basic use cases. They're not digging down into the real utility that they're going to get. And then on the flip side of that, you've got the more advanced users, maybe that are in enterprises or banks or very private companies that are utilizing it greatly, but they're not talking about it, or they're unwilling to talk about it publicly. I know of at least like 3 banks that are doing this kind of all independently, and they're utilizing it, but they're not allowed to talk about it publicly.
Yeah, I'm seeing the same.
And how do you normally handle that kind of situation where we know there is utility in something, and we know there is internal interoperability between internal tooling, but it's not being demonstrated in the open source ecosystem? Like, I can't imagine we're the first spec to have that kind of situation.
Excellent question. In ITF, you can solicit implementation reports from people that are completely private. You can do it with a questionnaire, for example. Do you rely on the output of annotations? Do you rely on this feature? Is this in tool chains internal to your company? And then somebody fills out, do you think the spec is missing anything? And then somebody fills out that questionnaire. You put it in an implementation report and say, look, we proved that there's interoperability because we asked implementers. It doesn't all have to be open source.
Yeah.
Or like even publicly available software.
But that happens, I think, with JSON Schema a lot. And again, and on my experience, just to double down on what Ben said, I think a lot of implementations or tooling on JSON Schema are made by open source people seeing their own like small use cases of JSON Schema. And I would say even a lot of tutorials and whatever, they're extremely biased to just like the tip of the iceberg, right? Things like a schema store and other ones that are just like barely, like touching on like the very basics. And there is a whole world out there of like extremely heavy JSON Schema adopters, right? Doing also the craziest things ever that you would see with JSON Schema. But as Ben said, even though a lot of them even want to talk about them, and we have invited them to the JSON Schema conference or case studies or whatever, it usually gets blocked at the legal team on their big enterprise and like, no, we cannot talk about anything at all of what we do. You are prohibited, right? And then it all gets lost in the but there is, I think, a major bottom of the iceberg that I think most people are missing, and therefore they don't see the spec through that lens, right? And then we see people, for example, complaining, oh, dynamic the references is such an anti-pattern, like why would anybody would want to do that? But you do see like the entire other side of the coin, which is like, oh, that's exactly what we needed for this complex use case. We're like really happy that JSON Schema has this, right? So I don't think we have good enough representation on the actual interesting use cases of JSON Schema in the community because of this, which is, it twists everything, which is funny.
Yeah, one of the challenges for the working group is getting the right stakeholders to show up and provide their, opinion as part of consensus calls.
Yeah, that would be nice.
Yeah, I think, the challenge with that you've been struggling with for a while is, and I think we kind of tried to start making headway into trying to fix it, is that often these siloed enterprises or organizations which are doing their own thing are not interested. Frankly, like they don't. It kind of like sometimes you manage to find someone internally who cares about it and actually wants it to succeed, but it's just slightly off their mandate that they can't devote any actual time to doing that, and it's super frustrating.
So much of this in the last 20 years, when I started working on internet standards, people from Google and Microsoft regularly participated, and then they all dropped off the face of the earth because it just became just Web 2.0, just publish your own API and screw the rest of the world. Yeah.
Like why write web standards when you own the browser, right?
That's right.
But let's not go down that path. Otherwise we'll be here all night. Yeah, like it's really interesting because I think like the plan I had, and I think when we had more time to dedicate to it was more viable, is trying to engage industry in a more strategic way, and getting like an industry forum going where we could properly have experts and advocates work in that sort of like dual surface way, where they be the advocate internally and the expert externally, and be able to contribute those expertise and experiences in a way that was meaningful for them and for their organization. but that never got off the ground. Like, unfortunately, it's just one of those things. But I think it had a lot of potential, and we started to make inroads to that with the case studies, and getting to conferences and talking to people. But yeah, like a frustrating number of people that we started talking to change roles. Like that's a real problem. When they're moving like so much mobility around with employers, and
that is endemic right now.
Like sometimes like case studies would take almost like a year to nail down, and then you'd be like, oh, okay. I think like a good portion of them were actually like finalized once the key person we were actually interviewing or communicating with like moved on. But they were still willing to do it, which is really good. But it's a strange thing.
Is there some idea when another conference is going to be?
Yeah, that's a great question. We've started talking with a few people at API Days fairly recently. We kind of repicked up those discussions. So yeah, we don't want to kind of commit to anything yet. And it will really depend on people's availability to get to those events.
Yeah.
I'm definitely putting in my diary Paris, because that's the kind of big one. And having done that the last couple of years, I think is super valuable. And I think every time we do it, we learn something about like how to organize it better, or how to better prepare, or like what time we need to do stuff. So yeah, like Paris is the big one for me at least. And hopefully we can get more people to do that.
Yeah, and I was thinking of going for the API Days Lagos event happening this July. I'm still thinking about it, although it is happening in my city, but like far away from where I like stay. But it's something I am looking at doing. I'm like 90% positive on going for that. So, and I also had a chat with Tuli today about it. So they have a workshop for the event, but I'm just thinking of being present at the booth, just like last time. So that's something I'm planning right now, and I will share more information about that. But aside the one for Lagos, I'm still thinking for us to be present for the one in India, just like last year also. And I'm sure that we have more contributors that will be happy to do that for this year. But I will learn more about that and like get more information. And then definitely Paris one. Although we can do the one for Munich. I know Ben went for the one last year. I don't know if he is available to like go again for this year. But like that's also something we can be present at. And the one for London, I don't think the one for London is out yet. But yeah, those are just some things we can do. We can just stay at the booth, because I know that the one for dedicated tracks is always the one for Paris. But at least for like all these other cities, we can just be present at the booth.
I mean, my 2 cents, I think, on the conference, and I think I shared these probably on Slack and one of the GitHub issues, but what I see with my work is that the most enthusiastic adopters of my tooling, for example, or even some of the consultancy I've done, it's interestingly enough on the majority not API people, is usually data people. Right. And my only minor concern, I think, with all of these is that because of XYZ reasons, I think we're mostly participating on events that are extremely specific, API specific. And that's a very specific type of persona with specific needs on JSON schema, usually with OpenAPI as a proxy. that it's actually very different from the needs of other groups that, at least in my experience, seem to me the ones that are doubling down on JSON schema even more. And I think we should have a strategy, at least at some point, to not abandon the API part of it, right? But at least like zoom out and also participate in other ecosystems, because I think there is a massive asymmetry on the people that we're also talking to and looping into the conversations and advocating for, which might not even be the people that get this the most.
Yeah, about that, I think I can give feedback on that. So I know sometime last 2 months we opened an issue to share other conferences we can be a part of. So right now we are doing API days because of like it is kind of free, and we are spending like little to nothing to like be to attend, and they also have a track. So our blocker right now is finding conferences that are also happy to have these kind of partnerships with us, because I know most times you would have to like pay some certain amount, and that's something we might not have the money for to like do continuously. But yeah, if there are conferences that we can partner with for a little to no fund, yeah, definitely we'll be happy to like do that. And I can also bring up that issue again, so everyone can like be a part of the conversation again, because I think we may have forgotten about it, so I will just bring it up again. Yeah.
I know I flagged this last time, but I'll flag it again that for IETF participation, the fees can be waived for IETF. The remote participation works actually really well, especially if there's only one meeting for somebody to participate in. Remote fees can also be waived if there's a reason to. Just has to be a reason, it doesn't have to be that perfect reason. And as we were looking at the Sovereign Tech Fund, right? Isn't that right?
Yeah.
There are organizations offering stipends, especially for I suppose it's EU. Well, not just EU, but like non-big tech participation in standards.
Yeah, but I think I think I checked that later on, but it was only for EU residents that they would waive the thing for the IETF, which then makes it a bit harder. But yeah, I think we should exploit those things more. I think, again, like I would want to broadcast, I guess, the JSON schema message and evangelizing, again, still on APIs for sure, but also in other places. I think we're missing a big part of the picture. And I get it that it's, yeah, we might need to make some connections with people that will allow us to have a, like the actual place to speak, or maybe have like a booth or something like that, and maybe that's IETF as well. But I think we should be looking beyond APIs as well. That's my only thing.
I just wanted to ask Lisa, you were talking about like the sovereignty funding or something. Did you mean the sovereignty standards funds, or the standards program or something?
Yeah.
Yeah, because like from what I understand, like the sovereignty funding agency, it has like a couple of different programs. One of them is the standards fund, which is given to individuals that are implementers that, like, it's mainly for implementers in order to assist in IETF work and specification and stuff. So I think this is it. I think. Yeah.
You think it requires some open source participation as well as the standards participation?
Like from what I understand, this is like, for, like, let's say for example, like the qualifications or the requirements for it is that you are a maintainer of some ecosystem, open source ecosystem, like JSON Schema, for example, and that you're mainly an implementer, like you are a guy that actually writes the code, and it is made so that you could give your insights as an implementer to the people writing the specifications and standards, okay? And like from what I understand, it's like around 5,000 euros or pounds a month for 10 hours of work or something like that. So yeah, I think it's pretty great. I don't know. I just wanted to. I felt like I needed to specify exactly what it did. You know?
Cool. Well, I think we are about to run out of time. But yeah, I mean, let's keep the ball rolling. I guess. I mean, so I subscribe, by the way, Lisa, to the IETF mailing lists. So I'll keep an eye on that and see where I can bring value as as appropriate. But other than that, yeah, I think it's mainly evangelizing. I think a lot of these things, and yeah, maybe getting funding for the project, that would be nice as well. I think that would be very strong priorities. I think there are many edge cases and subtleties on JSON schema, but it serves well for the people that I think manage to get down enough on the rabbit hole. I think mostly, yeah, being loud on what we do and why it matters. I think it's the most important part, I think, at this point, in my opinion.
Juan, last week you had mentioned like that we need to actually find projects in order to get funded because the sovereignty funding program requires an actual thing to fund. I actually did the research here on this. I spent like a couple of hours researching it, and yeah, I'll share all the details tomorrow, hopefully.
Cool, awesome. Yeah, we should look into that.
Yeah. You know, like in my research, I was using like I mostly used Claude Code Claude, okay, and it actually mentioned you by name, you know. So yeah,
Cool.
Mr. Worldwide.
There we go. Well, all of the best then, everybody. And we have the office hours also tomorrow, where we can, I guess, like dig deeper on whatever. But I think we made good use of the lack of an agenda. So
I certainly
no
appreciate
shortage of
the
stuff to do.
conversation.
Yeah, and I
same.
appreciate you also hanging out here, Lisa. That's very useful. And yeah, I mean, let us know if we can help in any way. Again, we're on the mailing list, but I'll keep an eye if there is anything I can do. But if you think I can help in any way, sure, just ping me. More than happy to.
Thank you.
All the best,
Alright.
everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay, everyone. Bye.
Goodbye.